to the Insomnicat Show with Nicolette and Brian. We'll get real deep with you, educating, inspiring, and solving problems with some of the most inspirational humans on the planet. Buckle up and come on the journey.
I'm excited. All right, guys, I'm Nicolette, and today Brian and I are here with Specialist Eric Herrera. He is going to talk to us about his experience, in the US Army, and we're going to talk about some really deep stuff today, hopefully. And thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, no, thank you for having
your service.
me. Oh, yes, no problem.
Thank you for your service.
So, Eric, why don't you kick us off and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
I'm born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. Grew up on the north side of Chicago. Being on the north side, it's mainly Cubs territory, but I've been a Sox fan all my life. Currently, I live on the south side of Chicago now. I ended up playing sports all through high school, things like that. And after high school, wasn't sure what I was going to do. I got into college. I went to Northern Illinois University. Didn't participate as much. Didn't go to class, things like that. I was more interested in the party scene. Ended up getting kicked out of Northern Illinois. And my mother told me I needed to do something with my life. I needed to get a job, go to community college, and live with her. I wasn't going to have that. So found out a few of my friends joined the military as well and decided to go to the recruiting station. Got a lot of information, things like that. Also, I have uncles that are Vietnam vets, and I went to one of them, gave me a lot of information, and I decided I wanted to be a combat engineer. I actually found out that my one uncle was a combat engineer during Vietnam, so he gave me a lot of input on what to expect. I ended up going to the same basic training site as that he did in Missouri. So he told me everything that was going on. He told me it was going to be hot, and it definitely was hot. I went in the summer of 2005, and 120 degree heat and humidity. It takes your breath away a little bit.
So, I mean, what would you say then? We have obviously other questions, but what would you say? Can you explain what a combat engineer does for those who are not aware?
When I joined, the description for combat engineer pertained to World War II and Vietnam soldiers. So the description was clearing minefields and building fortifications. During the Iraq War, that kind of changed a little bit. There wasn't that many minefields going around. It was mainly the IEDs that were placed on the sides of roads. And the military decided to use the combat engineers to do route clearance.
Okay.
So you were responsible for removing them, making sure everyone was safe the best you could, right? If I understand that correctly?
What we were tasked to do was we would go out on mission about 8 to 12 hours a day. We would go 5 miles an hour down the road and looking outside the window to find these IEDs. The thing about it is in Baghdad, where I did my first deployment, there's trash everywhere. So it's like landfills everywhere. And having to go 5 miles an hour down the road, we have to see these IEDs that are put in these landfills most of the time. The thing is, doing it every day, that we actually memorized these trash piles. And sometimes when we figured something did get moved, 9 times out of 10, there would be something there. When we would find something, we would have a specialized vehicle that's actually called the Buffalo. I have a little miniature thing.
That's really cool.
So this vehicle was actually shown in the first Transformers movie. You guys ever seen that one? Optimus Prime is fighting this Decepticon that looks like this. And the whole point of this vehicle is it has this large crane on the front of it. And this crane could hold about maybe 250 pounds, things like that. And it has a spork on the end of it. And we would use the spork to dig up, move trash, anything like that, to interrogate whatever we're looking at. After we would find something, we'd make sure the area is safe, and we would have to call in EOD. They were the disposal guys that were in the area. And sometimes, depending on where we were at, we would have to wait maybe an hour, 2 hours for them to actually get out there, because they're going 5 miles an hour down the road too, because they don't want to get hit. After that, they come out with their robot, look at it, things like that. They put a little charge on the IED and then detonate it in place where no one is around. And then after that, we continue mission and look for more.
Okay. Wow. That's fascinating. I never understood how that worked. You know, you see things in films. Do you ever watch films and feel like they represent what goes on so poorly? Or are there any, you know, do you ever feel that way?
Yeah, a lot of people don't like to watch war movies with me because I talk in the middle of it and point out the wrong things about it. Yeah, some of the modern ones are a little bit off, but some of them are actually really good. What is it? I can't even think of it now. The one that's in Afghanistan now, I can't even think of. It's with Jake Gyllenhaal and
I know what you're talking about. Brothers? Yeah. Brothers? Is it Brothers?
No.
He's in one with
that movie depicted a lot what soldiers go through, the mindset, the physical struggle of it all. That one was really good. I think maybe one you're thinking about is maybe Hurt Locker, which with the EOD guys. Yeah. I watched that for maybe about 15 minutes and turned it off because I worked with those guys, and a lot of the stuff that was going on in that movie, you get in a lot of trouble for, or really wasn't all that true. But there are some other ones. Black Hawk Down is also a very good one. That the mindset and everything, the physical components of it all.
Was it Jarhead? Jarhead wasn't Jake Gyllenhaal?
Jarhead, yes, that's what it is. Jarhead, yeah. That's a real good one. I mean, it has some action in it, but it does a really good job on getting into the mindset of an actual soldier and what we deal with.
I know I'm going down a totally different path right this second, but have you ever seen Homeland on Showtime?
I watched maybe the first season of it, which was really good. I thought it was really well made about it. Yeah, I didn't really see all the other seasons though. Yeah,
I was curious your opinion on that. That is just one of my favorite shows, and my understanding is that they actually the creators had insight from the CIA, you know, the real CIA, and they were basing a lot of that show on things, and you can kind of see mirrors of what's going on in the world in the show. You know, it's just, I just wanted your opinion on it as someone, you know.
Yeah, the depicting the area that's over there, yeah, it was really well made. The details and everything like that. Another one that does really good details is American Sniper. The details that are in each shot are absolutely amazing. I would laughing during that movie because just how they do it. Even getting down to the point, there's some scenes where they're actually in their living quarters, and when they open up the door to their living quarters, there's a string that's attached to the door, and against this string there's a water bottle, and it's a counterweight to keep the doors closed. Those little details were amazing that I saw in those movies. Yeah,
that's so cool.
I have a question. You mentioned you guys had to wait like, you know, maybe an hour for the other vehicle to come. How stressful was it? Forget about just finding stuff, right? And then you found it, and now you have to wait there, you know, sort of like exposed on the road, you know, for the other guys to come. You know, was that like just even that waiting time really stressful?
Yeah, and the longer we wait, the more dangerous it got. You never know when someone's coming with an RPG. We've been shot with an RPG. We have been shot at while we've been sitting there. During my first deployment, we actually found 126 IEDs. That is not including the ones that have blown up on us or the fake ones that we have found. Right. As you were saying, waiting there, we were so busy that we would never go more than 2 days without finding something. So toward the middle and the end of the deployment, we were actually requesting these EOD guys come out with us on mission to reduce that wait time of an hour, 2 hours. They didn't like it too much because they had to go out, but I mean, it's better than having to get all your stuff together, go out and then come back. You might as well come with us and get it over with right away. So that's one of the main things that they requested for us.
Now, you mentioned they have dummy ones. Is that just to almost like set you guys up? I mean, I know, like to just, okay, here's a dummy one. They're going to sit there. They're going to, that way they could, try to attack you guys or whatever the case is.
Yeah, so in the beginning of our deployment, we would have battle numbers on the side of our vehicles. We would come across these fake IEDs, and they're just laying in the middle of the road. That it's not being disguised at all. During the middle of our deployment, infantry unit came up to us and said, "Hey, we came across a cache, and we have tons of videos of you guys." So what they're videotaping us of our procedures and what we do and things like that. So that's why a lot of these fake ones were put out there to see what we actually did.
Wow. Yeah, that's I never even thought of that. Now
it raises the hairs on the back of your neck when you know people are watching you. We knew that we were doing something right, so we really couldn't complain.
Right.
Now, when you now you're home now for a few years, correct? You were home in 2010, if I recall.
Yeah, I've been home for the last 11 years. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's 2021. I'm like, I don't know where I've been. I feel like that's a few years ago.
Yeah.
So it is 2021. What has it been like since you've been home? I think we see, it's kind of not discussed, in my opinion, as much as it should be. And I don't know if you disagree, what that process is like. And you talk about, the mindset in these films that people watch for entertainment. But what is that really like? What is that process like? What was it like for you?
In my book, there was 2 incidences where we actually have lost soldiers. And for years, I really struggled with it because they were my brothers. They were really good friends. The mindset of it all really dwelled on me for years, and thinking about it and nightmares going over my head those nights and things like that. It did put stress on me, and I was more of a loner, you would say, things like that. But I kept things to keep myself occupied. I took up fish keeping. I used to have tons of tanks in my basement. Just doing that to keep my mind occupied on it all and not to think about it. And it also helped me relax as well. But after a while, it really didn't work out. And the thing is that we really don't get that many resources, especially when we leave. I mean, we might get maybe a pamphlet with a few numbers on it, and so most of the time you're on hold or you don't even get through, things like that. I actually ended up going back to college after I left the military, and I was walking through the library and I came across a table that was a lady that was with the Veteran Resource Center. She ended up telling me that I actually had a resource center 8 to 10 blocks away from my house that I had no idea that was even there. That kind of really made me disappointed, and found out the resource center gave therapy and things like that, also group stuff. I actually ended up going a couple of times, but at that point I wasn't really ready to tell what I went through and what I did. It's been a long 10 years for me, but I've finally am now at peace after writing my book and things like that.
So number one, it's sad that there was a resource center so close to you, and especially with technology today, for unfortunately them not to have technology to let you aware of it, right? Whether it be like a mobile app or something like that you could just go, okay, here's where I am, here's where all my resource centers are, that's it actually makes me sad. It really does. But you talked about your book and healing. Was that really where you started your healing process when you started writing your book?
In December of 19, I actually had my final mental breakdown about it all. One of the instances where we did lose soldiers was December of 06. It was Christmas. And it was about the 13th year anniversary, and guys were coming out, and I think they were finally cracking about the whole incident, things like that. I myself too. And me being there, I wanted to set the story straight on what actually happened. And I finally had my big meltdown in my kitchen one night. And that's when I decided I wanted to do something. I started making videos, telling the stories of what happened, but I'm not all that too like social media savvy and things like that. So I figured the videos, I really wouldn't be able to get my message out. So I just started writing, and the more and more I wrote, the better I felt. Um, I just, I didn't have to have all that stuff built up inside me anymore. I put it all down on paper and it's there. I don't have to deal with it anymore. That's when I really started to heal.
That's great. And there's something to be said about that for anybody who needs some healing then, like
Yeah.
if that can work for you, that can work for other people, I think that's really important to emphasize. But I do have a question about what you think, in your opinion, what would have been different? What would you have liked to have seen? And what would you like to see for others coming home? What kind of resources would you love to see available that maybe aren't right now? What would make it the transition a little bit easier, or dealing with the feelings and the stuff inside?
Better information on your area. The one big problem is a lot of these soldiers, they do come from small towns. So a lot of these resources that they can get are maybe a couple hours away in another big town. I'm fortunate enough to live in a large city where these things are readily available. That's the best thing the military, I think, right now is actually trying to do, is just give phone numbers to these guys that are actually in the middle of nowhere. But at the same time, that really doesn't help as much. But it's also on us as the soldiers. So one thing I always get asked is, what can you do to help yourself? And the one thing you really need to do is, if you actually decide to get out of the military, you need a plan. If you don't have a plan, then you're going to go straight downhill. When I left, I was going to try out for the Chicago Police Department, and I also went for TSA, but I had such bad hearing loss that I failed a lot of those tests and weren't able to get those jobs. So I did kind of fall flat on my face a little bit after that, but I was getting odd jobs, and I decided to go back to school, and the military paid for my education, so I took full advantage of it. Um, Another bad thing happens is that the last 3 months of my contract, uh, I would get phone calls, I would get emails every day. I would even have recruiters show up at my door, hey, to come back into the military. And after a while, I got frustrated. I was like, it would be better if you give information on how to help me. And when that last day of my contract ended, I stopped getting phone calls, emails. People stopped coming to my house. I never had any contact left with the military after that, and that was a little disappointing. I think it should have been more that give us more information rather than trying to keep us in.
No, absolutely. They should have spent those resources instead of trying to recruit you back in, right? And
Yeah.
seeing how you're doing, right? Whether you're doing good, bad, indifferent, just
Right.
checking in. I mean, you guys served, you guys are, they should be checking in on you guys regularly.
Right.
But after my active duty, I was in active reserves for 3 years. So it's once a year I go to a base, and yeah, you get your checkups, things like that. But most of it was kind of like a real dog and pony show. It was guys that have been out of the military for so long, and they're trying to throw their ranks around, and like, dude, I just want to be here, get this over with, and go back home. So it was mainly wasn't really helpful. It was mainly just saying, if you're physically ready, if they actually needed you, you could come back.
Right.
Now, do you think that's why a lot of people end up going back, because of that pressure? As you're getting ready to end a contract, did you feel that maybe that people do succumb to that?
One thing is that soldiers stay in so long enough that they actually become dependent on the military. I know a lot of soldiers, they're either themselves or their wives or their children have some kind of medical condition. One guy in my unit, his wife had lupus. The military paid for her medication, and he couldn't leave. There was no way. I can't leave. I can't pay for that medication if I get out. Things like that. Also, another thing is that guys leave and their home and they say, wait a minute, I miss it. I miss all my friends. And that's the thing. They miss their friends. They miss their comrades. They don't actually miss the job. So when they go back into the job, they're like, oh, no, this is why I left. So they get kind of stuck there for maybe a couple more years and they kind of regret it. That's another big thing.
Yeah. And I'm assuming too, if you've been in the military for a long time, transitioning back to that civilian life is hard, in some ways. Right. And maybe sometimes it's like, wow, I was there. Like there's some, even though it may not be the best thing, is there some sort of like familiarity with, that military life? Like, what it is versus, how some people are uncomfortable with change, whether it's good or bad change. Do you know what I mean? Like they're uncomfortable with change and that familiarity. Do some people go back because of that?
Yes, that was one of the things that was almost drew me back. Um, See, like in the civilian world, if you mess up at your job, I mean, they could fire you, and that's that. In the military, if you mess up, they really can't fire you. So what they end up doing is they put you in a job where you can't screw up. They put you out of mind, out of sight.
Right.
And a lot of guys end up being in that position for a long time because leadership doesn't want to deal with them or things like that. And that could make the time longer and your time more miserable. And another thing, yeah, you're talking about transitioning.
Mm-hmm.
At first couple of months, I felt like I was the grumpy old man in the grocery store yelling at people because
Right.
be saying, what are you doing? That's not how you do things. So I had to teach myself how to be more patient with people and things like that.
Do you have any, I don't know if I should say advice, but what would you say to somebody who is interested, a young man looking to join the military? Do you have any advice for that person?
I asked my uncle that same question before I joined the military, and he said, I will never tell you to join the military because if you die, I don't need your death on my conscience for the rest of my life. And I was kind of disappointed when he told me that. But after I joined, I knew where he was coming from. I get this same thing too, is I will never tell you to join. I will tell you my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And you can base your decision off that. Yeah, I don't need your death on my conscience either. But do your research. That's one of the main things. That's why I get asked a lot. They have soldiers that come back and they don't know how to deal with them, I guess, or help them or things like that. So I try to give them a little of this and that and help them along the way. And it does help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Eric, where can we find your book? Tell us where we can get a copy.
My book is on Amazon for paperback and Kindle. That's where it is at the moment.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Eric. Go ahead, Brian. Did you?
Oh, yeah, no, I think one of the things I think Eric said that was really profound is, when that's advice, you talked about advice is when you go into the military, making sure you have a plan when you exit.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Whatever that is. And I think that was very profound. Like, I think that you could take that to anything, if you join anything, what's your plan when you exit? Because eventually for everything, there's an exit, right? So I thought that was very profound, Eric. Thank you.
And another thing that's also a problem is people or companies say that, oh yeah, we'll hire veterans, things like that. Well, there's hundreds, thousands of us out there. So, I mean, not everyone is going to hire you just because you're a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
The Army did give me some resources about finding jobs. So I used to go to these jobs fairs that were basically for veterans. And I went to maybe about 2, and I never received any calls from any of those companies. And I contacted a lot of the guys that went along with me because I either seen them at school or seen them at functions, things like that. And I asked them too, you ever get a call? And they're like, no, we not got one single call, this and that. So a lot of it was maybe like dog and pony show type of thing. So after the second one, I kind of stopped for it because there might be good reason of don't have the jobs, but I think it's more of a dog and pony show about it.
That is important to bring up as well, for companies that say they are hiring, veterans to actually be hiring veterans, right? And to kind of make that more known for those who are seeking jobs. time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't. I'm actually going to go purchase your book right now, Eric. I definitely want to. I definitely am going to
Yeah,
read.
definitely. I'm so glad that you were able to find some peace through
Yes.
writing. You know, we talk about storytelling a lot and writing and how it heals, and we've talked to so many different people across the, span the gamut, people who have, lost spouses and wrote about it, and anything that they've been through, and writing has helped. That seems to be the recurring theme here,
Yeah.
that we encounter. So I'm glad that you were able to find a little bit of comfort there.
Yeah, my family, my friends really never knew. They knew what I did, but they never knew the full extent of it all. And my mother, my father, reading this was actually the first time they ever knew what I actually did, and they were kind of shocked at the matter. And I said, well, I mean, it's not something that you really talk about. The only time I ever talked about was maybe some of the guys that I was actually with,
Mhm.
that was there with me during those days, and those are the only people that I really felt that would listen. But as I was writing, I told people I was doing it, and most of my soldiers that were with me wanted to talk. They wanted to talk too. I guess there's that stigma that you're not man enough if you express your emotions. But I mean, your friends are out there; they'll listen to you, especially if you've been with them in those
Right.
situations. It's good to talk about it.
Absolutely.
That's a really valuable point, actually, and it's funny you bring that up, because I'm, as a civilian, I watch these things right on television. I wonder sometimes, why don't they, why, or if this is your wife, why can't you just talk about what happened, or why can't why is it so difficult? And I think you hit it really on the head there. Like, maybe it's also people aren't really wanting to hear it, almost, or not quite. Like, do you ever feel like they can't handle it, or something like that? Because I always wonder, I know there are people who are more, their emotions inside, and I live with someone like that. But me, my heart is on my sleeve, and I talk about everything. So I always wonder, what prevents someone from talking about it, besides the pain. I mean, I'm not sure.
There was a couple incidences where it actually, I mean, we came back and there's a little liquor involved, and all of a sudden it starts coming out. And a lot of the wives would be around too, and they're like, you could see it on their face, like, oh my God, I've been wanting to hear it. But as soon as they hear it, all of a sudden, most of them leave the room, or they say stop, because some of the guys that we had, they knew them as well. So, I mean, we're all family, and it's kind of rough hearing the actual firsthand account of a family member dying. And
Yeah.
yeah, there was a couple of times that would happen. So a lot of us would say it in private, things like that. I mean, me myself, I've been blown up twice, and I've had friends that have been blown up 3 4 times, and being able to talk about it afterwards really helped. A lot of people think of us as crazy people because we would actually laugh about it sometimes. I mean, if we couldn't laugh about it, I think we just have that pucker factor 24/7.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just being able to laugh about it afterwards and things like that really did help.
Yep. Absolutely.
I get that. So, sometimes you hear, on different levels, you talk to people who've been through these things, and they're laughing. You're like, that's crazy. Why are you laughing about that? But I mean, I do that as well. There are things that I've been through that people look at me and they're like, why are you laughing? Because you know what? It's part of life. It's part of what I went through. And what am I going to do now?
Well, it helps you cope, especially,
Yeah.
like you talked about it. Sometimes it's you and the people that have been through it with you. You guys, it helps you cope with
Right.
the emotional part of it.
Yeah, I when I came back, I was telling people what I actually did. And during the time when I was doing the job, I thought it was just a regular job to me. It was something that we did, it was something we had to do. But coming back, telling people actually what I did, the looks on their faces were kind of like in shock. Like,
Right.
why would you ever think about ever doing that? And that also was another thing where I kept quiet, because I finally realized to myself that, oh my God, I really was doing something that was nuts. And um, but now I like to educate people on it. A lot of people really don't know about us and what we did. And in my book, they the experiences we had. We were so busy. We would have officers from different countries come out on mission with us to see what we did and how we handled things. We knew we were making a difference, and we want to let people to know now that what we did.
That's awesome. So, Eric, you mentioned also PTSD, and I know this is something you said is on the rise. You know, what's going on there?
As of a couple of years ago, it used to be 21 soldiers would take their life every day. In the last year, it's actually gone up to 22 a year now. So I've actually been to functions where here in Chicago, they would do a 21-mile ruck march along Lake Michigan, and trying to get that awareness. It would all be soldiers and things like that. But yeah, the number is going up, and pretty soon it's been going up for maybe the last 10 years. I know it's been up. It used to be 20 and then 21. Now it's 22. So it's really not, the awareness isn't getting out there, and I wish it would be more.
Yeah. And that's a day. That's crazy. You know, that's every day. That's sad.
And you would, and to me, I would think that with all this technology and with the way that we're more connected, you know, but it's in my mind, it would seem like those things would be helping, but really they're not. You know, I mean, what do you think is contributing to that rise?
The technology should help. I know when I joined the military, that's when YouTube and Twitter in 2005, that's when everything was starting to come up. Now, I mean, with Zoom now and things like that, I mean, I use that technology now to talk with my friends and things like that. I think it needs to be more aware to the soldiers that there are people out there that will actually listen to you. I mean, you'll turn on the TV, and during your time you're watching TV, you might find one commercial saying to join the military. I mean, but what would it hurt to actually make a commercial where put out numbers and websites to veterans that actually need this help? I wish the military would do more about that.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you again for sharing this and letting others know that it's okay to talk about it. And thank you for helping others. You reach out to other soldiers as well, correct?
Yeah, I still talk to the guys that I'm out with. I still have friends that are still in, that are going to be doing their 20 years, and they're in high-ranking leadership positions now. So I always keep in touch, things like that. Yeah, that's what we have to do. We only have to be there for each other.
That's right. That's
Absolutely.
awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you so much for your service. We really, really appreciate it. You know, these are the heroes, in my opinion. You know, you guys. So,
And everyone grab Eric's book.
yes,
Eric's
we will
book.
put a link. We will put a link in the description as well. So,
No, thank you for having me.
thank you so much, Eric.